Folks, welcome into a brand new episode of the Crowd Assist podcast presented by Trainwreck Sports. As always, Wake here with my partner in crime, Kevin Masseri, and special guest from Buff Rumblings and a bunch of other podcasts that you can see on his Twitter, Kurt Haumesser. Kurt, we haven't had you on. I think we were talking from before the show since week 5 of the regular season last year. So this is long overdue.
So. I know. Time flies. I mean, the NFL schedule waits for absolutely nobody. So I appreciate you guys bringing me back on here. It's refreshing. You know, we're almost at the draft. We're about a little over a month away. Free agency is wrapping up a little bit, but, you know, Bill's still making moves today. So can't complain, guys. We're having fun here.
Yeah, Bill's made moves today. I made some moves, getting some Easter shopping done. Went and did a little Target run. Kevin, want to ask you, because Kurt asked me, are you a Peeps guy, or do you have a different Easter candy you like to go with around this time of year?
So my wife's a big Cadbury eggs, the little ones, not the ones filled with caramel, the little chocolate milk. She loves them. Yeah. They're all around the house. I actually don't hate Peeps. I think they're okay.
I don't hate them, really.
I don't hate them. I don't think they're the world's best, nor do I want to eat them every minute. But
did you see Pepsi's coming out with a Peeps flavored Pepsi?
All right.
You're going to try that out, Kev?
I'll probably try it out. Will I love it? I probably won't love it, but will I eat it?
Oh,
I'll probably take their head off, eat it, enjoy it. You know, one Peep at a time. That's about where I go. And then they get stale in 24 hours.
I actually like them stale more than I like them regular. That's
Here's a hack.
Weird.
Here's a hack. Do it over a bonfire.
There you go. Some s'mores.
Wow.
I'm telling you, it's a hack. We don't have great weather here in Western New York, but it's a hack for if you're around somewhere that does, or you do bonfires in the spring. Completely valuable advice.
Keep those stale Peeps around and use them for s'mores when it gets nice out. Kev's onto something here, I think.
And with the chocolate too that you get, you get the chocolate from Easter.
Okay,
you need some graham crackers.
Yeah, that's impressive. That might be the best advice that anybody gets in this show. Some other advice I do gotta give though is that everybody should definitely head over to our sponsor Manscaped and get the Lawnmower 3.0. Ever since I started using that thing, my shaving experience has been just top notch. It's got a headlight on it. So no matter what, no nicks, no bumps, no nothing, no accidents. They are the best in men's below the waist grooming, and they offer precision engineered tools for your family jewels. They are trusted by over 2 million men worldwide. So join the movement, become one of them. Go to Manscaped, 20% off using promo code Trainwreck and free shipping. So obvious big news today that happened while I was in Target, naturally.
Of course.
Bills signed running back Matt Breida to a 1-year deal. Kurt, is this something that you maybe expected? Maybe not Matt Breida, but adding to the running back room before the draft?
I did have my eyes on him. If looking at this team and the needs that they needed going into this offseason and free agency opening up, it's this team always every year they rely on those veteran leadership guys, and Matt Breida seems like that kind of guy. You know, he's not the Frank Gore where he's going to be 35 years old and needing a walker to run around, but he's still got the talent. I mean, as soon as the Bills signed him, the video blew up all over Bill's Twitter of him breaking off that big 83-yard run against the Browns. This guy's got speed. He has speed, and it's really something that they lack in this running back room. Because you look at a guy like Zach Moss, he's kind of the ground and pound. He'll run you over. And Devin Singletary, he'll make you miss in a phone booth, but he doesn't really have that breakaway speed. So this was the perfect signing. I love it. He had a little bit of a down year with Miami last year, but Miami's offensive line and kind of trying to figure out who they were with Tua at the helm. So I think this could be a big bounce back year for a guy like Matt Breida.
Yeah, it's coming from a team like San Francisco where he was before Miami, getting used to playing in that kind of, 2, 3, sometimes 4 running back platoon. If you want to count Kyle Juszczyk into that as well, maybe 5 sometimes. Kevin, are you a fan of the signing? Did you hope they might go another route in free agency, or does this check the speed box for you?
I'm in the camp of the pick 30 running back committee.
Oh, you are.
So I'm on that. I'm on that crew. I think it's with the missing link to the Bills' offense, personally. And we can blame run blocking, we can blame a couple of other things, but I think what I got away from the press conference to end the year was in running game needed to get better. But what did they go and do? They re-signed all their linemen. So if they felt that way and then re-signed literally every single offensive lineman, what are they saying? They're saying that the running back room wasn't good enough. There was times down the stretch they didn't trust Moss. There was times down the stretch they didn't trust Singletary. They're kind of going off of feeling at times. I really think that they were after a premier running back. Now, they don't know one's going to get there till 30, just like with Stephon Diggs last year. They didn't know that Jefferson would be there. They didn't know if CeeDee Lamb would be. They didn't quite know the scenarios, and they couldn't. It was a huge position to have. The difference is they had a huge gap at wide receiver 1.
Yep.
Yeah.
They don't have a huge gap at running back 1, but I think if the right player's there and they've been around town looking at these running backs, they take them. But they're not going to trade up. They're not going to trade major assets. If Etienne is there at 30, I mean, they're going to take him. That's my opinion. So I even think with Matt Breida that they would make that move here. And would they trade one of those 2 third-round picks that they've taken? I think it's possible. I don't think it's crazy to assume that, especially, will they do it today? No. Will they do it on draft day if they get Etienne or Najee Harris or others? Possibly. So I think that's something to look out for in the running back room. And I'm a big fan of Matt Breida. You do have to knock him for whatever happened in Miami last year. I'm a fan of his. I've tweeted that I am. One of the fastest time speeds in the league. Commonly has some of the fastest plays in the league. 22 miles per hour I've seen. He's fast, and it is something the Bills are missing. But what happened in Miami? Why was Laird getting carries in front? Why did Myles Gaskin take all the carries?
He was dealing with injuries too. You gotta remember he was dealing with injuries. So, I mean, for a guy like that, with the speed that he has, I mean, if they're not 100%, you're going to notice that, and that's probably why he got his snaps taken away. But I agree. I mean, I just think that, the influx that the Miami offensive line had, and kind of, the head coach figuring out what kind of quarterback do they want Tua to have? Do they want him to rely on the run game? Do they want him to rely on the pass game? It just seemed like a weird situation. And Kevin, you kind of talked about it. Or Wake, you talked about it, just saying, when he was in San Francisco, he had guys like Raheem Mostert, he had guys like Tevin Coleman, he had guys in front of him where he didn't have to be the lead back. And when he went to Miami, there was talks of, can this guy carry the load? Clearly he can't, that's why, he's not going to come into Buffalo and take tons of snaps away from Devin Singletary. But I think he comes in, and the Bills, if they don't go running back at 30, which I don't think they do, but if they don't do it, they could become a kind of a running back by committee. They don't have to rely on one guy. They can have a room full of guys that can come together and possibly break off those 83-yard runs like we saw with him last year in Miami, 2 years ago against Cleveland.
Yeah, what this says to me is that, obviously, Singletary and Moss have done little to nothing recently to kind of instill confidence in the fans or the coaching staff. And, and over the last season, I remember, Kevin and I both would constantly correct ourselves or maybe double back and say not to be critical. But now is the time to really start to be critical of these guys. Maybe Zach Moss deserves a little bit more leeway, but when Devin Singletary dropped that pass in the Chiefs game in the AFC Championship, when I saw that happen, and that was basically stalling the drive on a must-score situation. Every drive is a must-score situation. That's neither here nor there. That was the turning point. We're knowing, I'd rather have TJ Yeldon in passing work at running back, and if that's the case, we can definitely do better than TJ Yeldon at that. Yeah. So it seems the kind of thing where, if it's one of those like the heavy sets where there's like 2 tight ends, the big people sets, as Jeremy White like to call them, that might be where we see Zach Moss in there just because that's what it is. And then Devin Singletary more in the gun and pass or possible running situations. And Matt Breida might be the one that's like spread out 4 wide and 1 running back. He might come in there. So for fantasy purposes and fantasy, if Trainwreck is gearing up to have some more shows out soon, none of these running backs are probably people you want to touch, but it does make this team a much more well-rounded attack. Kevin, I know I cut you off at the beginning of my little rant there, so go ahead.
No, not nothing overly to talk about, but I think the biggest scenarios here is how do they view Etienne and Harris, right? I mean, that's the key of this whole component. Now, are they going to take a running back at 30 to take a running back at 30? No, absolutely not. They're not going to do that at any position. But how do they view Javonte Williams, Michael Carter, Kenneth Gainwell?
Yep.
It's tough for me to say. They should be day two prospect, either late second round picks. But if they don't get one at 30, I don't believe the Bills are going to go out and just add to the running back room again like they have in years past. Though I think with the top 2 talents, I think they will. I think they'll say that brings our player to that player brings him to the next level, right, Kurt?
I mean, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say you have to think that those two players, and I don't know if there's a third, but those two players would be the fits that they may seem to take this offense to the next level.
And I think, if they're sitting at 30 and let's say both those guys are on the board, they're going to sit there and they're going to think about it. They're not just going to say, I think they go cornerback in the first round, but let's just say they're sitting there at 30. Travis Etienne, Najee Harris is sitting there. They're going to think about it. They're going to debate it. They're going to say, you know what, these guys could really come in and they could be that spark plug that we need in this run game. And I wouldn't necessarily complain. I wouldn't be upset if they took those guys because they're extraordinary talents. They could really just come in and make this offense dynamic, which you need to beat a team like Kansas City. Mm-hmm. But with the holes that they have on defense and with this stacked cornerback class, I would love to see them get one of these top guys in the cornerback class.
I'll ask you though, real quick, Kurt, on that note.
Yeah.
How they view it sometimes though is where it thins out. Now, do they like any other running backs in the system? We don't know if there's, potentially third or fourth or fifth guy all the way down to, maybe a Jarrett Patterson. I don't know where they view some of these running backs, but we do know the depth of cornerback is one of those situations to where you take that game-changing guy at running back and you're like, you know what? If I have to move up, we know Bean's moved up in the second round every year. If he'll do it, he'll dump one of those 5th round picks to grab the corner he thinks can start at cornerback 2 with a deep class, but you're not getting that at running back. So how do you kind of weigh that?
That's fair. And I mean, again, we're not in Brandon Bean's head and this guy's mind. I would love to know what goes on in it because he is a genius. But it comes down to, do you have faith that you can draft a guy at 30 overall and he'll become an extreme Alvin Kamara? He'll become that guy, or are you going to draft him and he'll become a middle of the pack running back that can still have that insane talent? It just depends on what they see. And, I think there's a lot of very good cornerbacks in this draft, but Kevin, you make a good point. I mean, do they think that he's good enough to go at 30th overall over a running back? And I don't know. I think it's kind of interesting, if we toss around the idea of, let's say they draft Travis Etienne at 30. What do they do with Devin Singletary? Can they flip him for a 4th round pick? They don't have a 4th round pick this year. Maybe they do that. Maybe they use that for the cornerback position. There's a lot of moving parts that can go on here. And I trust Brandon Bean with my life. I think this guy can do whatever he wants on draft day, and I'll believe it. But like I said, I don't think it would be a terrible. I don't think it'd be a bad move to go running back at 30 if you can find that corner in the second round that you really, really love.
And running back or cornerback at 30 is something that I've thought about a lot, and I've always been. Honestly, since the beginning of me starting to look at the draft, I've wanted an offensive lineman, no matter what. Like whether Creed Humphrey is someone who people say could be taken in the middle of the first round or towards the end of the second round. Nobody really knows, but there's just so many great young athletic offensive linemen in the class. Cody Ford at guard. I don't know how much I love that. I don't know how much Brandon Bean and Sean McDermott love that, and they're not probably just willing to say you didn't work out at right tackle, but you have the inside route to the left guard spot. Like there's a small sample size of it working last year, but are you in the camp of? And it sounds like it. Cornerback is more of an immediate need to address in the first round as opposed to offensive line.
For a long time, and still I love this lineman draft. I mean, the offensive lineman I really think that you can find all pro linemen in the first, second, and third round. I mean, these guys, there is tons and tons of talent. But that being said, I think cornerback or even defensive end, if they want to go defensive end, I don't really myself love the defensive end class unless you get one of the top guys with the 30th pick. But, you got Cody Ford at guard. That's great. It's still kind of a mystery. I mean, him. And then I kept tweeting it out. I kept saying, this John Feliciano deal, it's cheap, and it still means that he can be upgraded. The cheap deal that they brought him in, they're not locking him in at the starting position. They're not saying we're going to throw a ton of money at you to be our starting guard for the year, for next year and this year. And they made it so that he's still going to have to earn that spot. And let's say they go guard in the second round or even first round if they really love somebody and somebody falls. I could see that happening, and I could see that guy earning the spot over somebody like John Feliciano.
And so then the cornerbacks in the class this year, obviously, Caleb Farley is kind of the big story just because he was the one who opted out. Now he has these back issues that are coming up that my Uncle Bob Watkins is the renowned back surgeon that's going to be taking care of him. That's great for him. He's in very good hands. Uncle Bob, always fun at family reunions, great at horseshoes. But, it's and I had a little back and forth with Ryan Talbot on Twitter about it. He's a big fan of taking Farley if he drops all the way to 30. I'm just worried he's not in football shape possibly after taking a whole year off of football. Now he has these back issues, and he tore his meniscus, I believe, 2 or 3 years ago too. So is he the guy that you target at 30, or is it someone else you have in mind?
This draft is going to be very interesting for that fact that, these guys that opted out, they might fall. I mean, I would not be totally surprised. I love Micah Parsons. He's not going to be there at 30, but I think he could drop. I think he could drop. He might, if he played this year, he would have been a top 5 pick. And I think he still should be a top 5 pick, but I think he might drop it maybe towards the teens. Like these guys that opted out and maybe don't have a ton of film, teams aren't going to forget about them, but they're going to take the guy that had a great year last year and they have the film on last year. So, a guy like Caleb Farley, if he drops all the way to 30, my goodness, go buy a lottery ticket because the Bills will be very, very lucky if that happens. But, there's guys, top 6 guys, I think there could be a lot of corners that go in this first round. I could see anywhere from 4 to 5 corners going in this first round. And, there's talent all up and down the board. I mean, you look at a guy who's making a lot of money for himself right now with his pro day is J.C. Horn. I mean, he has rocketed up those mock drafts because he's looking good. And with situations like Farley, that kind of makes some GMs maybe think like, hey, this guy had a great year. He's healthy. He's coming in. He's ready to go. Maybe we pass on a guy like Caleb Farley. I don't know. I think corners and quarterbacks might be the main point of this first round in April.
Yeah, and not to mention the safeties out there too, and Patrick Surtain. I don't know. I've mispronounced Farley, so that's. But it seems like the Bills already have 64, maybe 65 people signed right now. Got to walk into camp with 90, so there's still a lot of people left to sign. Obviously, not all of them are going to make the roster. Probably very few that we see signed now will make the roster whatsoever, including the draftees. So I know we want to talk a little bit about this. Kevin, over to you. Is there anyone out there still that you want to see the Bills take a run at? Sure up depth somewhere. Anyone out there who you could actually see starting for the Bills at a value contract at this point in free agency?
Well, I think you're looking at it and you're thinking, well, the first one was possibly running back, and they went with Matt Breida. So will he start? Probably not. Is there a path there? I mean, sure, absolutely. It's not like he's not doesn't have any chance at it. There's a path there for him if he comes in training camp is really good. We could definitely see something crazy like that. But with assuming they're not going veteran running back now, if they do, it once again would probably be one of the 2 running backs in the draft. Other than that, I wouldn't see a move at running back beside a top talent. So you kind of rule that one out, and you're looking at the offensive line, and you look at that, and you're like, they put some money there. I don't see any moves there. Maybe another position they could go out in the draft if they do feel someone could replace one of those interior line starters. So you kind of rule those out, and you're kind of looking at it now, like, well, really, where is that position? Do they go after like a Jadeveon Clowney? I don't think so. I think they showed their hand there with an F.A. Abada yesterday. So they kind of shorn. Yeah, shown up some depth there. DN4 with 5.5 sacks. It's about all you can ask for. So I think corner too. I mean, that's the spot. I think it's the only one on the roster currently where you could actually legitimately get somebody to come in, play, call it day one, and start. So I think it's definitely corners, the only one left that you could kind of see that at. So then that's like, all right, so now you have a position there that you're rolling. We're talking free agent too. Could a trade in tight end come? That's the other position is tight end. There's not a free agent. They signed Hollister. You're looking at Ertz, you're looking at Ingram. Those are the 2 names. We'll see what happens on draft day, as there's been alluded to both players. Now with Kyle Rudolph's injury, what does that mean for Ingram? what does that mean for Zach Ertz? I don't think they can keep him past the draft. So we'll see what happens there in Philly. So that NFC East kind of controls the tight end cards for the Bills. I do think they'll stay away from it in the draft, especially now that they have Dawson Knox developing. I don't think they're going to want to add another developmental prospect in there. I've been shocked before. I think they go the veteran route there at tight end. But, back to free agency, I mean, I think you're really only looking at cornerback. So that's kind of the position. So, what's left there? That's the biggest note that you can kind of go back and forth and see, is there a guy there that I like personally? Is it Richard Sherman? I don't know. Could he come in and start day one if he takes a good deal, Kurt? I don't know.
That's the thing you got to remember with this team too, is you look back at every offseason that we've had with Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott, and they bring in a veteran cornerback for this secondary. I mean, last year it was Josh Norman. It was Vontae Davis. Not that it really worked out, but they brought him in anyways. They bring in, it seems like they always like to bring in some new faces, some guys that have been around, even a guy like Kurt Coleman that they brought in. I think they like to have that veteran leadership there. And, as great as Trey is, Levi Wallace struggles a little bit here and there. And, if they bring in a guy like Richard Sherman, I mean, I don't know if the money's right. It could work out, but I think that could work. And, Sherman hasn't looked like the Sherman of old, obviously. And I think he's about 33 years old, but he doesn't have to be the guy. And, when he was in San Francisco, he was kind of the guy. They had some nice guys in the secondary, but he was the main focus in that secondary. You put him in with the Bills. I mean, you put anybody in with the Bills, any of these top end free agents, you put them in. Trey White with Poyer and Hyde over the top. I mean, I love this Bills secondary right now, but I still think that they add somebody in free agency here. The only other position group that I thought of before yesterday was defensive end, but they signed somebody yesterday, and we'll see. I don't know. Jordan Poyer is apparently recruiting Carlos Dunlap down in Florida, so we'll see. Maybe he takes a cheap 1-year deal, but I think that's the point that we're in free agency right now. Is all these guys that are left maybe taking 1-year deals and say, I'll take 1 year, $5 million. I'll go to free agency next year and I'll cash in. I don't know. I mean, we always say chase a ring, sure, but these guys want the money. That's really what it comes down to, as tough as it is to swallow. But we've seen crazier things from Brandon Beane, so I would expect some more moves to still come from him.
And I was personally shocked, and I'll bring him back up because it's the first time we'll actually talk about him on the show because we haven't been here since Hollister signed with the Bills. I mean, Kurt, are you a little maybe disappointed that the Zach Ertz route didn't turn out, or maybe happy we have the pick and still signed someone who's pretty reliable? Like, how do you feel about it?
If it was the 3rd round pick, I probably would have been a little upset. I love Zach Ertz, and I think he would have been awesome in this offense. Third round pick's a little too rich for my blood, but it can still get done. I mean, Kevin, like you said, I think, the Eagles, they pretty much have to trade him at this point. Howie Roseman just, for some reason, didn't want to. I just don't see them going into next season with Zach Ertz on the roster. It's just an awkward situation now. It seems like the Eagles are trying to rebuild. I think, come draft day, if they call him up and say, hey, 5th round pick, let's just get it done, maybe throw in a conditional 7th, I don't know. I wouldn't be totally against it. Like you said, I don't know if they really want to draft somebody and develop him along with Dawson Knox. Mm-hmm. But I love this Jacob Hollister signing. I mean, link him back up with his guy Josh Allen from college. He wasn't the most sought after tight end. He wasn't the big sexy name that Bills fans wanted them to sign. But he comes in and he's a reliable target. Russell Wilson relied on him a lot, used him a lot. And I think now this gives the chance for the Bills and Brian Daboll to kind of craft up that 2 tight end, not powerhouse, because I don't know if I really classified Hollister and Knox as powerhouse tight ends, but it adds some versatility to this offense, especially with those wide receivers that they have.
Yeah, Kevin, do you see the signing of Hollister? Do you see him and Knox on the field at the same time a lot? I know that's not really the Bills' MO. I don't personally expect them to go, more heavy into using tight ends and running backs. But do you think maybe with the signing of Matt Breida, signing of Hollister, do you think maybe they're just looking to have the option to be able to do that?
Yeah. I mean, I think so. What does he really add? I don't know. He's one of those positions where I'm not really sure if that takes him out of running for anything, right? I don't know. That's a hard one. I don't think so. I think if the right opportunity still presents itself, now they're not handicapped to having to do it, and the Bills can now go back. I think it's almost a negotiating tool now. You go back to the Giants, you go back to Philly, and you say, those guys are making over $6 million, whatever the case is. I have Hollister. We're completely fine with Knox and Hollister here. Yeah. We're not giving you more than a fifth, so you want it? And I think eventually one of them jump on one of the 5th round picks, and it might come toward the draft. It might come on draft day when they need the extra capital, when they need the salary cap. I don't know, but I do believe that they're not out of the running at tight end yet. I don't believe they'll bring in a rookie. Once again, everything's circumstantial, and they might see value there at some point, but I don't see them bringing in a developmental tight end. They have Tommy Sweeney that hopefully is back from his COVID related illness, and hopefully, they're still developing Reggie Gilliam as their backup tight end. They're still developing, they have Jacob Hollister and Dawson Knox, who quite frankly still developing. So I don't think they bring in another developing tight end, maybe. But I think that the number, it's just kind of like at running back there. There might be 2 guys out there, and that's Ingram and that's Ertz, that they deem will upgrade tight end 1, just like they deem that those 2 might upgrade running back 1. So that's kind of where I'm at with those 2 position groups. But I think corner is the biggest question now. And if they don't do anything from now until the draft, it's easy to say that it would definitely be the number 1 target in the draft. I mean, I think that's solid. And how do they do it? That's up to them. Do they think that they still want a position that's weaker at 30 and then backfill it in the 2nd round because they feel they could get a great talent? That's the Brandon Beane mystery.
Yeah, see, well, I think that, as far as Hollister goes, I do like the signing a lot, especially when you see one of his bigger strengths is his hands. Yeah. And Dawson Knox's biggest weakness is his ability to actually physically catch the football, which I didn't know. Breaking news, important to be a receiving threat tight end. Yeah, you kind of got to do that. Just for their careers, catch percentages, Dawson Knox is 55%. Jacob Hollister's is 66.7%. So that 12%, 11% cushion between the two is pretty good. And I think it will kind of maybe light a fire under Dawson Knox. If he drops a ball again, Hollister is going to be right there. He's maybe just as physically gifted, just as athletic, a little older, obviously. So, for tight ends, that probably actually is better for Hollister because, we talk about Noah Fant and Hawkinson coming back in the same class a few years ago, talk about all the athletic ones this year with Kyle Pitts. I still wouldn't be shocked if it took Kyle Pitts a year or 2 to acclimate into the NFL because that's just what tight ends do. So I wouldn't, if there was a line right now as to who would have more targets as tight end between Hollister and Knox, I might say it might be Hollister just because, Dawson Knox might still be in that developing phase where he's probably going to lose out on a lot of those personally. But, adding Emmanuel Sanders, it's clear this team is still going to be very wide receiver heavy in their offense. And so we'll talk about him a little bit. Kurt, do you think we're losing anything or is it more of a lateral move from John Brown to Emmanuel Sanders?
I would say it's more of a lateral with maybe a little tiny step up from John Brown. Sanders has got the age on him. He's been around for a little bit longer than John Brown, but I think what this guy brings to the team, he absolutely screams process. I mean, I think I can see exactly why they wanted to bring him in for, the 2 years that they've been rumored and interested in him. So the route running skills on this team, now that they have Emmanuel Sanders, are off the charts. With Stephon Diggs, Emmanuel Sanders, Gabe Davis, Cole Beasley, those are 4 of the top pure route runners in the entire NFL. And I mean, it's going to be extremely fun to watch because now this gives Josh Allen a chance to say, I can trust my guys. Emmanuel Sanders he's been to the Super Bowl. He's won the Super Bowl. He's won tight games. And so is Jacob Hollister. And I mean, he can have this faith with these guys. And, not saying that he didn't have that with John Brown. I mean, those guys were very close. But John Brown just seems like the guy, sprint down the field, will hit you deep. And he was a good wide receiver. I really think that Emmanuel Sanders might be a little bit of a step up. He might have lost a step here or there. But the route running skills, the mentality that he brings to this team, it's going to be off the charts. And this is a huge, huge pickup, I think.
Yeah, 61 catches on 82 targets for 720.
Still productive. Yeah, still productive.
Exactly.
Yeah, and
you wouldn't know that if you just Emmanuel Sanders is old now. He's played for 50 years. I mean, you would think he's typical falling off, but he still puts up numbers, and I think that's what the Bills saw in him on a 1-year basis, and the veteran leadership in the room. Not that, like you said, not that John Brown wasn't, doing that, but I think that Emmanuel Sanders brings it to the next level. Not that Stephon Diggs can't either, but I think you're adding another veteran leader in that room. And now you have a really great veteran presence in there for Gabe Davis and for Isaiah Hodgins, depending on which route. And then, Isaiah McKenzie, right? So now Isaiah McKenzie's in the fold. He does what he does well. Now he's adding in his kick and punt return abilities. He's kind of gone away from that.
Really excited for that.
He fumbled a lot in Denver. He got cut. Let's call it what he didn't get cut because he wasn't good at receiver. I mean, he didn't have a spot yet, but he got cut. He fumbled the ball a lot.
Yeah, if you give away the football, it's not good for your career or your team.
I don't care how good of what you're doing gadget wise or what you're doing. I mean, if you're fumbling the ball and you're our punt returner, I'm gonna cut you. It's out of principle. So you put your neck on the line there, and I think he's learned a lot from those experiences. Shown he can do it in that Miami game, Week 17. We got to give him the ball in punt return situations. If there's a huge pivotal moment, let Micah Hyde fair catch it or something. But I think you're going to see him. He's going to add that dynamic spot to the roster. And now you're going to be able to have an active game day roster spot that you needed on Andre Roberts. Now you can actually use it on Isaiah McKenzie to be your returner and your wide receiver 5. So I think that does that mean you can keep Hodgins active on game day or something? Now you have that opportunity, but you don't have to dip around the corner all the time now to keep a wide receiver 6 when you already have to use a special teams running back and a good gunner at that. He's probably one of the best gunners who was also re-signed recently. So there's some good things there. But they're running it back, guys. That's the number one thing we can all say is they're running back the roster, really making that Sanders for Brown swap and Star for Quentin Jefferson and a little sugar on top of that. But that's really what they're doing. I mean, they're running it back, and I think we've talked about it a lot. Do they do anything at tight end 1? Do they do anything at running back 1? And do they do anything at corner 2? That's what's left. I don't think there's any room left at D-end. I'm not huge on the D-end draft class, Kurt. I don't know how you feel. Especially you're talking DN2, DN3, DN4. I just don't see the value. You have Epinesa. I just don't see the value there adding someone at 30 or even in 62. I just don't see the value there.
I think they still might. I think they will add somebody just because, Jerry's great. Jerry Hughes has had a great year, but he doesn't have a lot left. So I think they still add somebody. I think they might bring somebody in to develop a little bit, but what do you guys think? I mean, I've seen a lot of different theories and a lot of different ideas of still drafting a wide receiver because this wide receiver class is absolutely stacked. We talk about the class last year and how good they were. There are some very, very good wide receivers in this draft. I've seen people say drafted at 30. I don't think so, but no. I think later round, absolutely, because why not? Why not add more talent if you have the chance to? Then it just comes down to who's going to make the team. Hodgkin was was he a 5th, 6th round pick last year, correct?
Yeah.
6. Yeah. So he's no guarantee to make the team. I mean, 6th round pick is no guarantee on any team. I'd still like to see what he has, but add in that talent, add in that competition. I think it could still be very fun.
Yeah, the one who's been making the rounds on Twitter lately is Rondale Moore, the guy from Purdue who had that ridiculous vertical. I saw one video of him as like a freshman at Purdue. He was squatting 600 pounds. Freshman.
I know.
He's a short guy. He's 5'9", 175 pounds. I'm just looking at the Draft Network page right now. I don't know that off the top of my head. But if he were to sign, he seems like a kind of guy who kind of maybe could learn from Isaiah McKenzie about how, and Cole Beasley for that matter, about how to make it as one of those smaller, undersized receivers in the NFL. Two guys, different, maybe skill sets, different, things they're really proficient in. But could either way be a good mentor for someone who's a promising young receiver at the very least. But if we're going to add the receiver, I feel like he's a guy who could probably go on day 2. He probably has a bigger window than most receivers in this draft. But, if we do, I would probably say it's a day 3 thing just because, days 1 and 2, it seems like, that might be like O-line, linebacker maybe, since, the 3rd linebacker spot on the other side of Trey White Trey Edmonds. And corner would be the main spots for the first 2 days of the draft. That's just me. If they find value, trust the process all the way. It's actually fun question I saw on Twitter. and maybe break it up a little bit. What's the one trust the process moment that you guys have had with the Bills? Like, so questionable decision or signing by Brandon Beane that made you think like, or roster move that was just like, I really got to trust him. I got to trust the process right now. I got to sip the juice.
I think the easy one is Josh Allen, but I think the first one for me was when they came in and they traded Sammy Watkins and Ronald Darby on the same day. I remember I was at work looking at my phone and I was like, we're going to win 2 games this year. I mean, I thought it was just stripping it down another 20 years, but, trust the process. I think that was the first one for me that was like, all right, now I can look back and say it worked. These guys know what they're doing.
Yeah, I remember that moment too. I was also at where I was working at Elmwood Taco and Subs in Elmwood Village. Shout out to the Lucinos over there, running a great establishment, still open right now. So go support our friends at ETS. But the one owner and I were talking, and he was like, "Oh, the Bills made a trade." I'm like, "Oh, wow, okay, cool." And then someone came up to me 3 seconds later, "Oh, the Bills made a trade." I'm like, "Yeah, Mike just told me." And he's like, "No, another trade." I'm like, oh, that's just got interesting. Yep. It's between that and Peterman being named quarterback 1. That's
yes. Okay.
That's up there too. Kevin, anything different between those?
No, I think just coming in and deciding to trade his players and handle the cap situation where it was, initially, probably one of the bigger leaps of faith that you had to have in him. And, knowing our history, why would we have? Why is he coming in? The coach knows him. He's coming in, replacing Doug Whaley, who was okay. He had his moments of okayness, tried things. That's what you can say about Doug compared to other GMs. Tried things. Did they work? Absolutely. Not all of them. He tried things.
He's like Tim Murray. He's the Tim Murray of the
right. Trading for a premier receiver, at face value wasn't a terrible. You just didn't have any other team members. Like you just didn't have the roster to do that. Could the team now do that? Yeah. Then they just didn't have the roster to have him. And, you're sitting there, you could still have someone like Khalil Mack on the roster, but that's beside the point. If you look at what Brandon Beane's accomplished, it's free agency. It's going out and spending a lot of money at the time on Cole Beasley. It's like, well, he's a good slot receiver. We knew that, but how good of a slot receiver is he? Is he just a guy that you're overpaying to be your slot receiver? And that alluded to the famous tweet of that's how bad teams stay bad, right? By one of the, Packers coverage people, I believe.
Yeah, that's right.
That's how bad teams stay bad. So that had to be a leap of faith for people to be like, we just paid a slot receiver $7 million at the time a couple of years ago, and the team's coming in not great. But it was a move. Now that player is a huge player on the roster, adds a huge safety. He's our tight end essentially. He's a huge safety valve for Josh Allen. Played with a broken leg. The guy's gonna have a life contract if he wants it. In my opinion, and he brings all the intangibles, and that's how good teams stay good. Brandon Beane's been that good in free agent. I think it's just his free agency success all around. Yes. It's what he's hit on consistently. Even like John Feliciano's, we can argue how good he is today, but even hitting on him and taking another chance, and Darrell Williams, and just rebuilding that line from scratch, and those guys getting paid and being good players. That's a huge hit for a general manager to be able to redo your offensive line like that, and then add in, add in other players and be able to take chances on, Cody Ford, because you have some good players there. So I think they add a lot of pieces in this draft on offensive line. I think that's the spot they have ability to develop now, because they have starters and develop. If they're not great day one, it doesn't matter. You can develop. And potentially have someone offset one of those interior offensive linemen. I think center's got to be the position you're looking at. This could be the last year of Moore. So I think you're looking at center. You're looking at a guy that can come in on a cheap deal, play center. And I think that's probably a huge target. I think it's harder at receiver with Hodgins. He's your guy that you kind of did draft. To add another one's kind of just putting in just a bunch of assets into it when you're already really, the best receiver core in the league.
Easily.
So we'll see if they do, but it is that good. So where is that? But then you're spending that asset, and how do you keep him on the roster? You can't. You just signed McKenzie. You just signed, or you're keeping around. Obviously Emmanuel Sanders for a year. And I don't know.
It's a good problem to have. It's a good problem to have to sift through all this talent. So not something we're used to, but I like it.
Yeah. So, unfortunately, will we spend some spots at special teams, cheap special teams players? Unfortunately, we'll probably see a lot of day 3 guys that haul their way to the roster. And even Brandon Beane will tell you that. So offensive line, there's a couple spots there open, but they really like Bates. They really like Butker. They have some guys there that they really like. I mean, so the swing tackle position's open, right? So that's a position open. Do they draft it? I don't know why you'd want to draft it swing tackle, but that's a position you could add right now in free agency and have a pretty good swing tackle. And they relied on having Ty Nsekhe through the year. So I do think that if they do add in free agency and it's not cornerback 2, it's probably swing tackle, and it's probably soon.
Fun guessing game. What offensive lineman does Brandon Beane trade before cuts are due for a 5th round pick, like he did with Wyatt Teller? And why will this offensive lineman go on to have a Pro Bowl year like Wyatt Teller?
Oh, don't say that. Wyatt Teller, that situation was tough, but he didn't have a spot, and
exactly.
You can say that's a black eye for Brandon Beane, but I don't really think it is. I mean, there was no spot for him. Nobody really, exactly. Nobody really expected it. So
he's always hurt though.
He's also hurt. Yeah. And also, I remember the story from Baker saying that he met some guy named Blake who was guarding for him the next day. And I think they might just have a good offensive coaching system in Cleveland. Yeah. It's got to be a testament to the coaching that the offensive line has performed so well there. That might not be a debate. One big debate, though, going on at Trainer Sports right now in the Buffalo bracket, Loganberry versus Andersons. Loganberry has a 4% lead with 219 votes in there.
Andersons. I like Andersons.
I love You can get Loganberry at Anderson.
That is true. This is true.
So you get both? Kind of.
Yeah,
Anderson's is great, and it brings me back to Little League Baseball because you'd always go there after the game, and I gotta go on there. I'll vote for Anderson's. That's my vote.
I like Anderson's. Do I like their food? No, I mean I don't really get anything.
I always get
their ice cream.
He's on my roast beef sandwich from Anderson's. That's what
They do have good roast beef sandwiches. This is true.
Yeah, no, that's true. It's true.
Go there over Arby's, hands down, for roast beef.
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
Last signing to talk about, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but is Mitch Trubisky. And this is kind of just like a luxury signing. It's fun. Maserati Mitch is in Buffalo.
Mitchell Biscuits.
Mitchy Biscuits. It's the upgrade over Matt Barkley. I mean, is there anything more to say other than this is just fun and exciting?
I think it's great for Mitch Trubisky. I mean, he comes in here with front office and a coaching staff that turned around Josh Allen. You can give credit to Jordan Palmer too. Turned around Josh Allen and really, all the hype and all the negativity surrounding him coming into the NFL. This can help Mitch Trubisky, and he's probably not going to see some playing time. God forbid, cross your fingers, Josh Allen gets hurt. I'm not completely giving up on Mitch Trubisky. I don't think he's a horrible, terrible quarterback. It's just horrible, terrible where he got drafted and who got drafted around him. So this is a great, great position for him. He can come in, he can learn, he can be mentored by Josh Allen, who's a young, up-and-coming star quarterback in this league, and maybe next year go make some money somewhere and possibly be a starter. I mean, we see a guy like Andy Dalton get paid $10 million.
Right.
I think Mitch Trubisky can go somewhere next year, make a decent salary, and possibly start.
Compensation pick time? Finally? Are they going to finally dip into that pool? But he's even a 1 for 10. Even a 1 for 10 puts you in the 3rd round range, roughly.
Yes.
Depending. Exactly. So there's a lot to consider there in the Bills making moves like that. And lots of 1-year deal. They can determine on the spot if that's something they think they're in the running for. And if they are, it could alter their decisions on what they do and think about. I mean, you're getting a 3rd round pick for someone signing Mitchell Trubisky. I would say that worked out pretty well and had a really good insurance policy for a year.
Another thing to remember, let's say training camp rolls around and we always see injuries during training camp. Let's say some team, has an injury at quarterback and they say, oh my God, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And they look around the league. They say, we're not going to be able to trade for a starting quarterback. Let's trade for a 2nd string quarterback. Who's there? Oh, Mitch Trubisky. Sure. Let's call Brandon Beane and say, hey, I got a draft pick for you. I mean, I think that's a good option too, if they want to go that route. If they get blown away by an offer.
And we know Beane's traded quarterbacks. We've traded plenty of them. Gotten value for him. So Mitchell Trubisky would be the most of anyone he's ever dealt with. So I think if you're looking at it, does Jake Fromm come in and show enough that you're comfortable with him? Yeah. I can't tell you. Maybe he does. Maybe, they do something else
Matt
there.
Barkley. If they trade Mitch Trubisky, bring back Matt Barkley.
I mean, it's not outlandish to think that they could do something like that, either Fromm or Barkley, and Davis Webb. Do those insurance policies I like? Not overly. That's why I was pushing the pedal for a QB2 last year. I said, if Allen goes down, season, and this is true of anyone. The season's over, but not necessarily when you have Marcus Mariota, Jameis Winston, and Mitchell Trubisky. He's in the camp. He's a winning quarterback. I know our past resident Bruce won't like hearing that much, but I mean, there is still something to winning quarterback. I mean, he wasn't on a good team. It wasn't like he was on good teams.
No. You got to question almost everything Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace have done in Chicago and build around him.
Still gone over 500. So what are you looking for? You're looking for him to go 3-2 if Josh goes down, and at least put you in position for 5 games to be there. But he can run bigger than all that. He can run the same offense. Is he as good as Josh Allen? No, but can he run the same thing? He sure can.
Absolutely.
Huge. Matt Barkley couldn't, so that's huge. I thought Matt Barkley's been awful since the one Jets game 3 years ago.
Where they dropped 41 points on the Jets.
On a bad rookie year by Josh. To me, it's a huge insurance policy. You know you're a legit contender. And it's not if Josh Allen goes down for the year, you know you're not winning. It's not that. It's if Josh Allen goes down for 4 games. That's what you need him to do, is keep you in the division lead and not be messing with the wild card because you lost Josh. It's if he goes down for the season, no one thinks that Mitchell Trubisky is going to do anything more than 9-7 at best. Or 9-8 now or whatever.
I love that.
So that's that. That's that. I mean, if he goes down, you're done. But if he doesn't, and you need him for 5 games, that's where he can keep you right there and give it back to Josh when he's ready.
One thing when you started talking about Bean trading quarterbacks, and then we'll move on, is him trading Nathan Peterman the closest possible thing you can think of to Kevin Adams trading Jonas Johansson for a 6th-round pick? Is that about the same?
The Lee Smith trade might counteract that. I don't know. The fact that they got a draft pick for a guy who said, I'm probably going to retire.
But if he does, they don't get it. That's the kicker.
Fair, but it's just the fact that they even agreed to it. I don't know. I love it.
No, I agree. I agree with you. Who was the lineman they traded? I can't even remember his name. Right off the hand.
Russell Bodine?
Yeah, God, he's so terrible.
He's so terrible.
I mean, they got a draft pick out of him. And didn't they trade it? Did they have a 7th-round pick this year from not Bodine, the other
Newhouse. Marshall Newhouse.
Yeah, Marshall Newhouse. Yeah. So you're right. Will they trade an offensive lineman? I think they love Bates. They love Butker. They won't even let him go. I mean, they let him go once, and they'll never do that again.
So then is Cody Ford the guy they trade? Is that the guy? He's young.
Or a guy like Trey Adams. I mean, he was a top prospect in a draft. He got hurt. He was dealing with some injuries. You know,
honest. Yeah.
Throw him for a 6th, 7th-round pick. I would not be too surprised.
Yeah, honestly, me either. A lot of people who could leave the roster, obviously, with the cuts and everything in the future. But what I want to focus on right now is all the people who are coming back. There's a lot of talk about all the continuity. The Bills are returning more snaps from last year than any team in the NFL. But this team didn't make it to the Super Bowl, and that's their aspiration. It's not to make it there, it's to win it. Obviously, Star coming back in, it's still continuity, but that is kind of an addition per se. So, Kurt, does maybe the lack of other moves worry you in any way? Because I could I understand both arguments where this team was so good last year, but they have room to grow, obviously, right?
Yeah, I don't think too much continuity is a bad thing. I really you look at a team like Kansas City Chiefs, they just lost 2 of their longtime offensive linemen. Those guys were probably a staple in that locker room. That's probably going to hurt. I mean, they're probably going to have to start a rookie, and Patrick Mahomes is going to be probably complaining about his offensive line again. And, now with the Bills returning all their guys, these guys know each other. They can feed off each other. It's not, oh, hey, how you doing? We're teammates now. It's, hey, what's up, man? We played together last year. Like, it's, these guys, they're building a family and a culture sort of thing where they can trust. They know, Tremaine Edmonds knows every move of Matt Milano and everywhere he's going to be on the field. That's what you need. If we would have lost Matt Milano, Tremaine Edmonds is going to be looking over at some rookie and saying, where are you going? What are you doing?
We'd be talking about linebacker right now, too, in the first round.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's a good thing, and teams see that, players see that, and players say, I kind of want to be a part of that culture. And that's why you add in a guy like Emmanuel Sanders, because he sees that. I mean, he said that he kept an eye on the Bills for reasons like this. They're building something special that is most likely, I'd like to think, we'd all like to think, most likely this is going to turn into a Super Bowl victory.
Yeah, and if you look at, that's a good point on Sanders. You know, he got paid. I mean, he still got some money, but I mean, it's fair. 1 year deal. He came in, going to Buffalo, New York, said all the right things. Seems like a fan favorite already.
Yeah,
changed his stance from ranch to blue cheese.
It was so fake, so fake.
It's fake, but I will say this: this is the only thing that's preventing me from fully calling it fake. Is store-bought blue cheese. I'll say this on Twitter till I'm blue in the face. Store-bought blue cheese is terrible. It's terrible. I'm a huge blue cheese guy. I'll put it on anything, defend it to the death. Store-bought Kraft or Ken's blue cheese, terrible. It tastes like crap. What isn't terrible is anywhere in Buffalo's local homemade blue cheese. And the closest one I found is Rudy's. But it's delicious. It needs to be refrigerated, not preservatives, not watery. It's not ranch. So people think it's kind of like ranch. It's disgusting. That's disgusting. That's not representative of even, if you even want to call it a Mooney's blue cheese or a Duff's blue cheese, Barbell's blue cheese. It's just not. So I will say he did come up, he had his wings and possibly real blue cheese. And I was like, all right, this is decent. This is good. I can say there's some water there behind his blue cheese swap that isn't quite totally fake. Does he still probably prefer ranch? Probably.
He was smiling way too much in that.
Real blue cheese is good though.
Like, oh man,
real blue cheese is good.
Yeah, real blue cheese. I only like real blue cheese. The first.
I don't mess with
I ever
fake
had
was
store-bought one, and that turned me off to it. I still prefer. People roll their eyes at this all the time. I prefer to eat my wings with the sauce that's on them. Let the sauce stand on its own. If it can stand on its own, it's a good wing. I understand. Accessorizing it, accompanying it, a good hot sauce with a blue.
You want your girlfriend to have on nice lipstick and a purse, right? I mean, it's the same idea as your chicken wings. I mean, it's the same thing. Like, sure, she's very pretty on her own, but you add in the accessories that are needed. Come on, let's be honest. That's what the blue cheese. I'll eat any wing without just their delicious buffalo sauce. But that is what the kicker is. It adds that special buffalo flavor to it. I think it's part of the experience. And anyone that doesn't like blue cheese just doesn't have real blue cheese. Like, in Maryland, you're wherever. It's not real. They're putting Ken's in their little cups and giving it to you. It's gross. No one wants that. It's disgusting. But continuity question, just back to Sanders. It's a real thing. Like, it's real. Like, I thought that's the thing that I thought was the fakest of this whole thing was like continuity and culture. But it's a real thing to be able to know where Stephon Diggs is, to know where Cole Beasley is, build that relationship with Emmanuel Sanders, and know your offensive line, good or bad. You know what their pros and cons are. So knowing that is more important than the devil you don't know, I think, in my opinion. So that's maybe why Josh is sitting there like, sign Darryl, sign John. I mean, we know what they can do. And we know, I personally know their downfalls, and I'd rather have that than be train wreck at the position. So I think that's, even if it does maybe have a better high, I'd rather take where we're at now and maybe develop someone behind those. So I think on the offense, it's huge. Being able to re-sign everybody was huge. We don't have to sit here and talk about linebackers all day now and waste. So what did continuity buy you guys? Everyone, it bought you draft picks because you don't need to use those draft picks to backfill those positions.
Yeah, so I mean, the continuity of this team brought back Darrell Williams, brought back Matt Milano. I mean, these guys bought into the culture and wanted to stay in.
They saw more and more people signing back, and were like, okay, well, if they can do it.
Isaiah McKenzie.
Yeah,
Isaiah McKenzie said he'd play for a bag of candy. I mean, he wants to be here. That's the culture they've built.
Many people are going to be throwing candy on the field. Like people
when fans are back.
Marshawn, oh my God. And especially fans are going to be back, hopefully in 100% capacity this time.
Likely.
Yeah, which is huge. And I have seasons for the first time in my life, so I'm super excited.
It's crazy though. I mean, the continuity, it doesn't literally give you a first round pick, but it does, because you would need to spend it on a linebacker. Now you can spend it on your weaknesses. You can spend the draft picks that you have, first, second, third, fifth, and fifth, on your weaknesses. You don't need to spend it on, how do I replace Matt Milano? And is this pick even going to be good? He might be the linebacker 2 or 3 at that point.
True.
I don't know. But you're spending a first to see if he's as good as Milano. Now you don't have the first. If you sign Milano, you're able to then go ahead. You know what Milano could do in your defense. Go ahead and upgrade cornerback 2. Sorry, Levi Wallace, probably the biggest weakness on the team.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially with Starr coming back to play one tech. If we didn't have him, if he did maybe retire, like there were some rumblings of, that would definitely probably have been the biggest.
He's at least playing this year.
Yeah. So thank God he's back. That should kind of let the defense align. We talked to Brutus about it last week that, the defensive woes on the run defense were more just people were playing out of position. Don't have to talk about all that again. But I do want to talk about the run game just a little bit on the offensive side, just because, we added Matt Breida. We still have the same 2 running backs as before. And, this is a good way to wrap up the show, kind of starting how we began. They're running behind the same offensive line.
Right.
So, when we talked with Bruce last week, he said, we all kind of agreed it's a matter of scheme, it's a matter of run blocking, and it's a matter of the running backs. It's not a one trick for all of them. So now that, Kevin, you kind of said it, we think that having everyone back, Brian Dable is going to know how to maybe scheme up a better run, knowing the weaknesses of the people in the backfield and those blocking, right? Like not to run more, but to actually do it right.
And I think a thing to remember, too, is the injuries that offensive line had last year. I mean, these guys really – the group that they have now in Dawkins, Feliciano, Morse, Ford, and Williams never really got to play together in a game. So I'm excited to see them, get some games under their belt together, learn what they do on the line, and then they can build something from that. It's all about continuity there, boys. It really counts. I think it matters.
Their worst game of the season was probably against the Chiefs. Even Darrell Williams didn't look great. Yeah. And we'll see. They want redemption on that. But Ike Butker is a guy I like the way he played at guard. So if they don't like Ford or Feliciano, and they'd rather Feliciano be the backup center and guard combo, I mean, they have an ability to play Ike Butker there at $2.1 million on his tender. So I mean, that's something to keep your eye on. Does Ike Butker have that starting job day one? Do they move? Is Ford your swing tackle guard guy? I don't know. I don't know if he's the versatility Ryan Bates type of role that he might be in, and they actually start Butker or they address left guard in the draft. I don't know, but I mean, I think the line's good. Is it great? No. Is it good? Yeah.
It's
and
good
I think
and it's deep.
Yeah, it's good and it's deep though. They love Bates, they love Butker. There's 7 players there that they like that are good. Could they add an 8th? Sure, but I think really all that's missing is maybe one piece there. So, I think that it's a solid position group. It's one that needs to get better running the ball, but they need to run it more effectively, right? Mm-hmm. Is it running back? It's still what kind of circles me around to cornerback in the second round, getting a great player there because it's deep, and running back at 30 because you don't have a shot at ETN and Harris very often.
That's true. Very true.
But I think one of them is guaranteed to go to the Steelers. Does someone else go in the first round before we?
Not with James Conner out there still. And I mean, what's weird about that? So, I mean, Clyde Edwards-Helaire went to KC. There's some ties there with Andy Reid. I think that there's some possibility. Christian McCaffrey with Bean. I think there's some possibilities that they value running back more than we think. They've shouted it out, and you tie the pieces together, signing all the linemen that they signed that were on the team last year. I think they're saying running back's an issue. And I think that they're also saying we've tried the 3rd round pick route. We're not going to try the 3rd year in a row.
I'm just happy to get another day 3 pick on running back. Like I love Garrett Patterson. I would love to see him in a Bills uniform, but it's just 3 years in a row of jamming the same peg in the wrong hole. I just don't know if that's going to work.
You need a 1st round pick, and they might think that too. The funny part is they might agree that, we've spent 3rd round, then this 3 or a 5th round. I don't know. I think that eventually they're going to say, no, we need a 1st round pick. And if we get that player we're looking for, does that mean Moss or Singletary could get traded for a 4th? Yeah, it could.
Yeah. Well, we got 30-ish days until the draft. I forget what day the exact draft
is. About a month.
But
April 29th. I'm counting down the days. Really
can't wait, boys.
Yeah, it's the most exciting time of the year. I know we're going to do a lot of fun stuff on Trainwreck tonight. Every Thursday night in April is going to be draft night. We're going to be doing different kinds of drafts, random ass shit. It's going to be really, really fun just to shake it up a little bit leading up to the draft. So make sure you guys check that out. And make sure you check out all of Kurt's stuff. I'll let him tell you where you can find all of his work.
Sure. You guys can find me on Twitter at Kurt, K-U-R-T, Haumesser, Haumesser 88. Find me there. I got my podcast going there, Laces Out podcast. Just had Ike Taylor on the show yesterday, so nice. Do a lot of NFL stuff. So fun stuff over there. Find me out there.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Kurt, for being here. We'll try to have not a 6-month gap and having you on the show.
Right.
We had him on the AFC game though.
Oh
yeah. We were saying I was with Zach doing something. I don't know, his crazy antics over with Maniac. But yeah, we'll hook up before the draft rolls around. We'll do something.
Absolutely. Love to see that. And love to see everybody tuning in. Thank you all for being here. We'll be back next week with another episode of the Crowd Assist Podcast, sponsored by Manscaped. Yep, fire extinguisher there for Mr. Svechnoff, putting out the heat on this episode. That's it for me. That was awful. I got to resign from my thing as host here. Thanks for tuning in. See you guys next week.